When trust is betrayed, a forbidden affair between a married woman and her best friend's son. You wouldn't believe it. But the seemingly perfect life of a 30-year-old woman was about to take an unexpected and tragic turn. A simple phone call from her longtime best friend would lead Adama down a path she never imagined, one filled with temptation, guilt, and betrayal. When Chick, her best friend's son, now grown into an alluring young man, entered her life, Adama found herself torn between duty and desire. What started as an innocent act of kindness quickly spiraled into a forbidden romance that threatened to destroy everything she held dear in a moment of weakness. Everything she thought was solid came crashing down. Can she save her marriage? Or will she continue down a road of deception and regret? Let's explore this story together. I never imagined that my life would take such a drastic turn during that winter in Lagos. At 30 years old, I thought I had everything perfectly arranged. For the past 5 years, I had been happily married to Tund, a man whose laughter lit up every room and whose unwavering support had become the cornerstone of my existence. My career was flourishing. I had risen through the ranks of my firm to become a respected professional. We lived in a charming house nestled in the tranquil suburbs of Leh, where the days unfolded in a predictable but pleasant routine: work, family, and home. I felt content, secure, and even proud of the life I had built. Little did I know, the foundations of my seemingly perfect world were about to shift in ways I could never have anticipated. It began with a phone call from my best friend, Amara. That morning was like any other. I sat at the kitchen table, savoring the comforting warmth of my coffee while the soft hum of the radio filled the air. The peaceful rhythm was interrupted by the sudden shrill ring of my phone. As I picked it up, Amara's voice came through, a mixture of urgency and distress that sent a jolt through me. "Adama, I need to ask you a huge favor," she began, her words tinged with a rare vulnerability. "It's about my son, Chaik. He's just been accepted into the University of Lagos to study architecture. But I don't know anyone there who can help him get settled. Do you think you could?" Her voice trailed off, the unspoken plea hanging in the air between us. Amara and I had shared a bond that transcended time and distance. From our carefree childhood days in Inaka to the challenges of adulthood, we had always been there for each other. Though she now lived in Aya while I remained in Lagos, our friendship remained as steadfast as ever. Without hesitation, I replied, "Of course, Amara. I'd be happy to help Chaik. He can stay with us until he finds his own place." I vaguely remembered Chaik from the few times we had crossed paths at family gatherings. The last time I saw him, he had been a lanky, shy teenager, awkwardly hovering on the fringes of conversations. Now, 7 years later, I was preparing to welcome a young man into my home. The day of his arrival dawned crisp and clear. Tund and I made our way to the airport, the anticipation buzzing softly between us. As we waited at the terminal, my thoughts wandered. What kind of person had Chaik grown into? Would he still possess that quiet shyness? Or had time transformed him into someone entirely different? The answer came moments later when he walked through the arrival gates, and my breath caught in my throat. Chaik had undergone a striking transformation. Gone was the lanky teenager I remembered. In his place stood a tall, athletic young man whose confidence radiated in every step he took. His smile was captivating, warm and genuine, while his deep brown eyes carried a wisdom that seemed beyond his years. His ebony skin glistened under the airport lights, and the neat precision of his haircut added a layer of sophistication to his relaxed demeanor. I was momentarily stunned. Auntie Adama. Chike's exclamation was warm and familiar, accompanied by a wide smile that revealed perfect teeth. He wrapped me in a firm hug, his embrace sending an unexpected shiver down my spine. Bewildered by my reaction, I quickly stepped back, stunned, oblivious to my inner turmoil. Greeted Chike with the easy camaraderie of an elder brother. During the drive home, Chike's enthusiasm was infectious. He spoke animatedly about his ambitions, his plans for architecture, and his excitement about this new chapter. I tried to focus on the conversation, but my gaze kept drifting to him in the rearview mirror, where our eyes would meet. His gaze held an intensity that made my pulse quicken, leaving me unnerved. The first few days passed uneventfully. I threw myself into helping Chike settle in, showing him around the city and ensuring he felt at home. Tun's demanding job as a corporate lawyer meant he was often away, leaving Chike and me to spend much of our time together. It was during one of these outings that everything began to change. We had been exploring the lush gardens of Freedom Park when Chike suddenly stopped and turned to me. The sun filtered through the trees, casting dappled shadows on his face as he looked at me with an intensity that made my breath hitch. Auntie Adama, I want to thank you for everything you're doing for me, he said, his voice low and sincere. I don't know how I could have adjusted so quickly without your help. His words, though simple, struck a chord. I smiled, trying to keep my tone light. You don't have to thank me, Chike. It's what friends, family, really do for each other. But he wasn't finished. He took a step closer, shortening the space between us. No, really. You're amazing. I've always admired you. You know, since I was a kid. His unexpected candor left me momentarily speechless. A blush crept into my cheeks as I struggled to form a coherent response. We should head back, I said finally, my voice a little too brisk. It's getting late, and Tund will be home soon. The walk back to the car was heavy with a tension that neither of us acknowledged. I could feel his gaze on me, and every accidental touch, a brush of our arms, a fleeting contact of hands, sent a spark through me that I couldn't ignore. My mind raced with a turmoil of conflicting emotions. This was wrong on so many levels. He was my best friend's son. He was young enough to be my own son. And above all, I was married to a man who trusted me completely. Yet, no matter how much I tried to suppress the feelings stirring within me, something had shifted irrevocably. My once predictable life was now a delicate balancing act, teetering on the edge of something dangerous, something I couldn't quite name. And deep down, I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The days that followed were an exquisite torment. Every shared moment with Chick became a storm of emotions, a tempest where desire clashed violently with reason. I found myself trapped in an unfamiliar, exhilarating cycle, choosing my clothes with painstaking care every morning as if preparing for a romantic rendezvous. The mirror became a silent witness to my internal struggle, reflecting a version of me I scarcely recognized. Then came that fateful afternoon. Tund had left on a business trip, and the house was eerily quiet except for the hum of distant traffic. In the basement, I was showing Chick how to operate the washing machine. The mundane task took on an unexpected weight. As we bent down to load the clothes, our hands brushed. It was a fleeting touch, but it reverberated like thunder in the silence. We both froze, caught in a moment that felt impossibly charged. The air seemed to thicken, every breath suddenly labored. Chick turned to me. His gaze intense. Unyielding. His dark eyes seemed to search my soul, drawing out the feelings I had worked so hard to suppress. Adama, he murmured. His voice soft but laden with meaning. Before I could summon the will to respond, his lips found mine. The kiss was a fiery collision, igniting a passion that had simmered beneath the surface for weeks. My hands instinctively reached for him, tangling in his hair as he pressed me against the washing machine. The room seemed to disappear, there was only the heat of his body, the intoxicating taste of his kiss. But reality struck like lightning, jolting me from the moment. I pulled away abruptly, my chest heaving as I struggled to catch my breath. No. Chick. I stammered, my voice shaky. This is wrong. We can't. His expression was a mix of frustration and confusion. Why not? He demanded, his voice tinged with desperation. I know you feel it too. You can't deny it. I looked away, unable to meet his gaze. I'm a married woman, I whispered, the words heavy on my tongue. And you're my best friend's son. This can't happen. I turned and fled the basement, leaving him standing there in stunned silence. Behind the safety of my locked bedroom door, I collapsed onto the bed, my heart pounding. What had I done? How had I allowed this to happen? That night, as Tund returned home and settled into bed beside me, I lay awake, my mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. The kiss replayed in my thoughts, vivid and haunting. I felt a complex mix of guilt, exhilaration, and longing. For the first time in years, I felt alive, terrifyingly, achingly alive. The days that followed were a careful balancing act. Chick and I avoided being alone together, but the tension was inescapable. Every accidental brush of our hands, every fleeting glance, felt like a spark igniting a hidden fire. Conversations became stilted, words carefully chosen to avoid revealing too much. Yet, the unspoken connection between us grew stronger, more undeniable with each passing day. One afternoon, when Tund was at work, Chick found me in the kitchen. His steps were deliberate, his expression resolute. Adama, he said quietly, his voice steady. We can't keep pretending nothing happened. I can't. What I feel for you is real. And I know you feel it too. I sighed deeply, gripping the edge of the counter for support. Chick. I don't deny what I feel. But this is impossible. There's too much at stake. We can't hurt Tund. And we can't betray Keisha. He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. I can't ignore this. Adama, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. What if we found a way? A way to be together without anyone finding out? His words were dangerously tempting. My mind screamed at me to resist, but my heart wavered. I closed my eyes, trying to summon strength. But when I opened them, he was right there, too close, too intoxicating. Before I could think, his lips were on mine again. This time, I didn't resist. I surrendered, letting the world fade away as passion consumed us. When we finally broke apart, our breaths ragged, I knew there was no turning back. We have to be careful, I said softly, my voice trembling. No one can know. This has to stay between us. Chick nodded solemnly. It'll be our secret, he promised. And so, Our secret affair began. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of stolen moments and whispered confessions. We found ways to be alone, seizing every opportunity to be together. Each kiss, each touch, was laced with forbidden thrill and unbearable guilt. I felt as if I were walking a tightrope, balancing precariously between desire and responsibility. But the weight of our actions began to take its toll. Every time Tund kissed me or looked at me with love in his eyes, I felt as though I were breaking into pieces. The thought of Keisha, of what she would feel if she ever discovered the truth, haunted me relentlessly. One night, as Chick and I lay in each other's arms, the reality of our situation crashed over me. Tears welled in my eyes as I realized the depth of the betrayal. "Chick," I whispered, my voice breaking. "I don't know how much longer I can do this." He held me tighter, his voice firm but tender. "We can make this work, Adama. We just have to believe in us." But even as he spoke, I felt the fragile threads holding our world together beginning to unravel. We were in my living room, the lights casting a dim, warm glow across the room like an intimate confession of the tension between us. The scent of his cologne lingered in the air, a bold yet bittersweet reminder of the connection we had allowed to flourish against all reason. As Chick held me close, his embrace felt like both a refuge and a chain. His heartbeat steady yet heavy with unspoken emotions. It was a melody of longing, yet its rhythm was laced with guilt, a fragile balance teetering on the edge of collapse. But as my cheek pressed against his chest, the familiar rush of excitement I used to feel was replaced by an ache, a sinking dread that spread through me like cold water flooding a sinking ship. The walls seemed to close in, suffocating, as the full weight of our actions came crashing down. My breath hitched, and I pulled away, my heart racing with a mixture of panic and sorrow. "Chick," I began, my voice barely above a whisper, trembling with the weight of words I never wanted to say. "We can't do this anymore. We have to stop." My gaze locked onto his, and I saw the fleeting flicker of protest in his eyes before it was replaced by the pain of understanding. "I can't keep lying to Temba," I continued, my voice breaking under the strain. "I can't keep betraying Keisha. It's killing me inside." For a moment, Chick looked as though he might argue, his lips parting as if to weave a desperate justification for the web of lies we had spun. But then he saw the tears streaking down my face, saw the anguish that mirrored the conflict in his own heart. And he stopped. Slowly, he nodded, the lines of his face softening into a mournful acceptance. "I know," he said at last, his voice hoarse and low. "I know it's wrong. But I couldn't help myself. I couldn't stop thinking about you." His words were a dagger, sharp and unrelenting, twisting the guilt inside me until it became almost unbearable. I knew the truth of his confession, for it was a mirror to my own thoughts. The nights I spent yearning for him, the stolen moments replayed endlessly in my mind, had consumed me. Yet, that shared longing did nothing to cleanse the taint of betrayal, it only deepened the shadows in my soul. "We've gone too far," I said, my voice cracking under the weight of the truth. "We can't erase what we've done, but we can stop it from going any further. We have to end this, Chick, before it destroys everything, everyone, we love." Chick reached out, his fingers trembling as they brushed away a tear that had escaped down my cheek. His touch was tender, but it only underscored the inevitability of the void we were about to create. "You're right," he admitted softly. But it won't be easy. The days that followed were a painful blur of avoidance and anguish. Chick and I stayed away from each other. Our silence a brittle truce forged in the fires of regret. But the effort to appear normal, to hide the cracks in our respective lives, was excruciating. Every glance from Temba, every casual remark from Keisha, felt like a spotlight shining on my deceit. One evening, as I sat alone in the dimly lit living room, the front door opened, and Temba stepped in earlier than expected. His presence filled the room. His footsteps measured as he approached. He sat beside me, his gaze searching mine with a depth of understanding that made my stomach twist in fear. "Is something wrong, Temba?" I asked, forcing my voice to remain steady even as my heart pounded in my chest. For a moment, he didn't answer, his silence thick with the weight of unsaid truths. Then, he reached for my hand, his touch warm yet trembling. "I know," he said softly, his words landing like a thunderclap in the stillness. I froze. My breath caught, and I managed to stammer. You know." Temba's eyes glistened with unshed tears as he nodded. "I know about you and Chick." The air left my lungs as the ground seemed to dissolve beneath me. I searched his face, hoping for some sign that I had misunderstood. But his gaze was unwavering, piercing through the fragile defenses I had built around my guilt. "I saw the way you two looked at each other," he continued, his voice steady but thick with pain. "At first, I told myself it was nothing, that I was imagining things. But then I found the messages on your phone. I couldn't ignore it anymore. My composure shattered, and tears poured down my face as his words stripped away every pretense. Temba." I choked out, my voice barely audible. "I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted this to happen." He held my hand tighter, his own tears glistening in the dim light. "Why, Chidinma? Was it something I did? Was I not enough for you?" "No," I said quickly, my head shaking as I grasped for words that could somehow ease his pain. "You were always enough. You still are. This wasn't about you. It was my failure, my weakness. I let myself give in to something I should have fought against." The silence that followed was unbearable, a chasm that seemed impossible to bridge. Finally, Temba let out a long, shuddering breath and released my hand. "I don't know if I can get past this," he admitted, his voice cracking with vulnerability. "I love you, but I don't know if I can trust you again." His words cut deeper than any reprimand, leaving me raw and exposed. As he stood and walked toward the door, he paused, his silhouette framed by the faint light spilling in from the hallway. "I need time," he said quietly. "Time to think, to decide if I can forgive you. But I want you to know, I've always loved you. That's why this hurts so much." And with that, he was gone, leaving me alone with the crushing weight of my choices. The room felt colder, the silence more oppressive than ever. Adama sat alone in the dimly lit living room, her heart heavy with the thoughts of everything that had transpired. She had lost the peace she once had, lost in a whirlwind of guilt and pain. Everything had seemed perfect, but one irreparable mistake had led her down a path full of challenges. Love and betrayal had turned her life into an unrelenting storm, not only shattering her relationship with Temba but also threatening her long-standing friendship with Keisha, someone she once considered a sister. Looking back, she realized that in her quest for personal satisfaction, She had hurt not only herself but also those she loved. Yet, deep within her heart, Adama understood that life was not always perfect. The journey to healing, though full of hardships, was the only way to regain her peace. While she could never erase the damage she had caused, she knew she had to face the consequences of her actions and learn how to forgive herself. Life is a series of choices. Sometimes, we will be tempted and lost in the wrong decisions. But what matters is learning to rise again and grow from those falls. If you find yourself in a similar situation, don't be afraid to face your mistakes. Sometimes, admitting our faults is the first step toward healing. Remember that love and honesty are the core values that help us build lasting relationships. Be true to yourself and those around you, for only then will you find true peace of mind. Learn to appreciate and cherish what you have, because sometimes, what we take for granted can easily slip away. Don't let mistakes rob you of the opportunity for happiness and peace that you deserve. Thank you for taking the time to watch Adama's story. I hope this tale has offered you a new perspective on life and provided valuable lessons. Don't forget to click subscribe to stay updated on our future videos. Share this video with your friends and loved ones so that we can all learn and grow together. Thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video.